All right, guys, we are live. Welcome to the Bagswitches Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Ginn. And in today's podcast, I'm with probably one of the best YouTubers when it comes to real estate investing in total, but also one of the best real estate YouTubers out there when it comes to creative finance. This guy's just been giving knowledge out on YouTube before I even started. When I started out in real estate investing, this guy's been giving value out and definitely a big go-giver, awesome dude. So thank you so much for coming on today, Matt Theriault.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So let's get the start off the bat before we get into the creative finance stuff. What is your story and how did you get into real estate investing?
Oh, good question. Yeah, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent the next 15 years of my life in the music business. I'm just noticing that you can see all my music stuff behind me. So so I spent the next 15 years or so in the music business. Did really well for myself, made my million, so to speak, before the age of 30. And then this thing called the digital download came along and just kind of changed the way the world consumes music. And it turned the entire industry upside down. And within very fast, short months, I found myself out of business. And then I had to eventually go file bankruptcy. The wife didn't appreciate that. So she took off, left me with all of her stuff. And, at the age of 34, I was bagging groceries. And I went from a 7-figure year to $7 an hour. There's a nice ring to it, but not at the time. It makes for a good story now. It was a pretty miserable point in my life. And I was there bagging groceries for about 6 months before I decided to actually take some responsibility for where I've landed and stop blaming everybody else and everything for it. And the grocery store manager, one of the most unlikely mentors, he actually came to me and he says, Matt, if you really miss your money and you want your life back, real estate is probably your best chance of getting it because it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth. And I was like, well, I feel pretty below average at the moment. So that sounds like a good plan for me. I knew I had to learn something else new, and I just wanted to learn whatever's going to give me the greatest income potential. So that was my initial attraction to it. And so I made a huge, I actually became a real estate agent. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I did that for a few years and realized, nope, the money's on the other side of the desk. And so I made a large investment in my own education and then just kind of did what the program told me to do. And it actually worked out pretty well. And I was really, at the time when I was getting started and what you kind of mentioned on the creative financing part, that was a necessity for me at the time because I didn't have the money to get started. And God, there's so many tools and shiny objects and all this push button stuff and this great technology that's available now. But when I started, I was knocking on doors. I was cold calling. I was driving up and down streets and writing addresses down and having to go back to the office and then do title searches and then try and find that person, send them letters and stuff like that. So that was how I did it. And, when I got someone on the hook for it, then I was like, I didn't have any money for it either. So I was really attracted to the creative acquisition strategies. And that's how I built my entire portfolio. I mean, I got up to 350 units before I ever accessed a bank loan. And I've reduced it down and optimized my whole portfolio. I'm down to about 50 units. And I only have 2 bank loans now. It took me that long for my credit score to recover in the first place. So I didn't have any other options. But that was where I started. So that's my actual origin story.
Wow. And what year was all this going on when you went from bag boy to real estate?
Yeah. So that was 2001-ish.
Okay.
Right. It was 2001. And so I was an agent from like 2, 3, and 4. And then I started getting the investing bug around 5. And that's kind of when the market was really taking off. Okay. And so I had a couple good years before it crashed. But because I was investing for cash flow and I wasn't a big flipper and I didn't have fix and flip projects going on and I wasn't trying to wholesale, but I was investing for cash flow and I did it the right way, that I wasn't impacted too significantly during that period. I lost a couple tenants, but I didn't lose any properties. And, times were tough for everybody at that moment, but I actually made it through and did pretty well.
Okay. And a couple more questions. So this was in Las Vegas?
No, this was in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just moved to Las Vegas a couple years ago.
Okay, cool. Yep. And first of all, thank you for your service. I definitely appreciate it.
I like the flag behind you. I always get excited when I see the flag.
Oh, man. I'm telling you, don't get me started with that. But
all right.
My next question here for you is when it comes to creative finance. So what is creative finance? A lot of wholesalers love wholesaling real estate, but they don't understand it. It's very confusing. It's not as, I don't know, easy as buy, sell. Can you give a quick explanation of what creative finance is?
Sure. The way it was explained to me, and I still explain it the same way, is that, people, when they come into real estate or whether they decide not to get into real estate, is because they think they need money to do it. And so they think they have this money problem, and they don't have a money problem. What they have is an idea problem, right? And so you can actually acquire real estate using more of your mind than you use your money. And those ideas, those creative ideas, are what we call terms. And so as a real estate investor, you want to look at every deal that I'm going to purchase this property in one of two ways. It's going to be by either my price and the seller's terms, or the seller's price and my terms. So as long as I can control one of those, the price or the terms, I can always make a deal for myself. So that's kind of the creative financing in a nutshell. I mean, if you go to a bank, they're going to give you the lending documents, right? And it's pre-written. There's no room to fill in the blanks. There's no room to, scratch it out and make some modification or anything like that. The bank, this is what you got. So do you want it or not? So that's like the opposite of creativity.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing directly with the seller, a private owner of a house, they can sell their house for however they want. And I mean, you could trade a plate of hot wings for their house if they wanted to do that transaction. So that could be an essence of creativity. I've never been able to do that before, but it'll be a great story once I can. But the point is, nothing's off limits when it comes to creativity. So they can sell their house for whatever they want to sell it for.
Definitely. So for California, the laws are a little different with creative finance here in Florida. So first of all, I want to say for all the lawyers watching this, I'm not a lawyer, attorney, CPA, so don't sue me. I'm talking from Florida. Matt's done a lot of creative finance deals, but you're not a lawyer, right, either?
No, I just pretend to be one on my YouTube channel. So, what you're saying right now, Zach, I've actually never heard that. So how are the creative financing laws different?
Well, I know basically if I do a creative finance, I think in Texas, their subject twos are different.
Oh, Texas, yes.
Versus here in like Florida. I think what's the difference? I mean, here in Florida, we're a lot more free. We can't do performance deeds in Florida versus like Arizona. But there's some other ways around that. But we're more heavily into lease options here in Florida versus like subject twos in other places, just because lease options are so much easier for us. But my next question for you here is, if you're getting wholesaling, you're starting to see a lot of the creative finance. I watch all your YouTube videos. You talk about lease options, subject to wraps. Right. Where should someone start, like from the beginning, when they're trying to get their foot dipped into creative financing? Yeah.
So I think if you've got a few deals under your belt as a wholesaler, and that's just kind of like the one way that you know how to do it, continue doing it that way, right? Do what's working for you. But at the next appointment you have with the seller, the next conversation you have with the seller, and you reach an impasse and say, you're offering $50,000 and they won't take a dime less than $75,000. So you're $25,000 apart, right? And you're just, no matter what you say, they're not going to budge. So what you could say, just to kind of branch into creative financing, is, okay, well, the market might allow me to give you $75,000, but I might not be able to get it to you all at once. How much do you need right now? So that question, just by saying, how much do you need right now, is suggesting that I'm going to give you some now and the rest later, right? And so I think a big mistake that people will use, especially when they watch like one of my trainings or anybody's training, is in us as real estate investors, we get bogged down into our what do you call it? Our jargon is the word I was looking for. Yeah. And we'll say creative financing, we'll say sub two, we'll say lease option. Well, sellers don't know what that is, right? You got to come across a really sophisticated seller or someone that has experience in the past of doing that for them to know what that is. So if you ask, if I could give you the rest later, if you're willing to wait a little bit for the full $75,000, how much do you need right now, is a lot different than saying, well, will you carry back the financing? that'll cause a seller to go up in their head, be confused and say, no, that sounds crazy. No. Right. But if you break it down in just plain simple English, like if you were talking to a fifth grader, then that's the best way to segue in. And then if they're open or receptive to that, now the whole world of creative financing opens up to you. But when you start leading with it and you start leading with your jargon, you'll confuse them and you'll ruin more deals than you'll probably make.
Oh, 100%. So do you have a certain like favorite one over all of them?
Yeah. I mean, I love it when the seller's going to provide the financing. So my favorite situation is a free and clear property or a high equity property to where the seller can carry back most of it. And I love to get them into principal only payments. And so again, that's jargon. That's principal only payments. I don't say principal only payments. Yeah. But in our previous example, if I said, if I could be able to get you $75,000, if you're willing to wait to get it, how much do you need right now? And so if they said, well, I need at least 50,000, or let's say 25,000. So they're going to carry back 50 for me, right? So that 50,000 would be like, okay, great. So if I gave you $25,000 now, could I divide the 50,000 up into 100 equal monthly payments? So there's nice, plain, simple English, right? I didn't say, oh, great, carry back a $50,000 note on principal only payments. And I'd be like, well, that sounds like a terrible deal, right? Yeah. But if I could take that $50,000 and divide it into 100 equal monthly payments, that sounds much more appealing, and it's much more easy for the seller to understand.
Okay. And obviously when you're starting out, let's say someone watches this video, they get super excited. They're going to get a lot of objections. So when you pitch something out like that with the payments, the payment option, what are some of the biggest objections you're going to get from a seller, and how do you overcome those?
The objections are more like, no, I'm not going to wait.
Okay.
Right? It's like either they're open to it or they're not. That's where the objection comes in. Now, if they're still pushing for like a higher price and everything, the way I handle objections, I say, well, you know what? I think your house is worth that. Like, I'll go ahead and agree with them. I think your house is worth what you want for it. It's just dealing with someone like me is probably not the best way to get it. I know a great real estate agent. I'd be happy to make that connection. I'm sure they could get you your price. Would you like me to make that call and set up an appointment for you? So basically just pushing them away, like, okay, well, you're not going to get it from me. And so if they say yes, then I know I wasn't going to get that deal anyway. Or they'll say something like, well, no, I don't have time to wait for a real estate agent. Okay. So what's more important to you, to get top dollar or to sell the house fast? Because we can't have both, right? I'm the fast guy. Yeah. The real estate agent's the top dollar person. So you can deal with me or them, right? So that's that. And I really push, like when you ask a question like, how do you handle objections? You're almost by default putting yourself in the wrong mindset. If you find yourself trying to convince a seller to sell you their house, you're doing it wrong. Yeah. You should position it so the seller is trying to convince you to buy their house. Right? So it's a totally different shift. It's a totally different mindset and positioning. And if the seller's trying to convince you, you're the one that's coming up with the objections. Yeah. You're the one saying, I don't know. I saw that crack down there in the basement. That looked like a biggie. That might, that might be more than I really want to handle. Oh, no, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, well, we can make an adjustment. And, so you start positioning and talking like that, then you're doing it right. And you don't have a lot of objections.
Okay. And so, always believing, that's a huge one for me. I always do that. But so what is the play on that? So let's say 100K and you get the 100, payments on there, or the monthly payments. What is the play for you to make money off of that?
Got it. Well, I hold everything. That's my intent.
Okay.
And my intent is to never sell it. Now, I sell stuff all the time, but my intent is the cash flow. I'm a big believer in the whole rich dad, poor dad, escape the rat race idea. Because, I made a lot of money in real estate before, but I was only as good as my last release that I had last month, right? So I had to keep on putting a new release. And I never really, even though I had made a lot of money, I had a big bank account. If I stopped releasing records, then my bank account got smaller and smaller and smaller. And having gone through that traumatic experience at midlife and never wanting to return, that whole idea of having that passive income come in and cover my monthly expenses, that's a much more appealing and comfortable position for me to be in now. So, I'm doing well for myself at the moment. But when I first escaped the rat race, like, I wasn't rich, but I didn't have to work.
Yeah.
And so I got really indoctrinated into that whole thing. And then I got to experience it real life. And then it just became a part of me. So my goal is to always hold. So I want the cash flow. But for someone that's wholesaling and they're like, yeah, but I need the cash right now. I need that $5,000. I need that $10,000 wholesale fee. Perfect. No big deal. So what I do is, once I've got the deal under contract and I've got the terms negotiated, now I go and look for private money to pay the down payment. Okay. And where I get my cash and my cash flow is I always borrow more than I need. So if I need $10,000 down, I'll get a private money loan for $15,000. So now I can put the $5,000 in my pocket and I still have access or I still have ownership of the property and the cash flow. So I get the best of both worlds doing it that way.
Okay. And speaking of private money, I mean, trust me, OPM is one of the greatest things out there. But how could somebody watching this, we got a lot of younger people watching this too. They're in their 20s. Maybe they didn't have the money or the reputation you had, but I mean, your credit was probably shot back then. How does a young guy or a young gal get private money for something like this?
When one of the words that you said, that they don't have the credibility and they might be feeling a little bit inferior in the transaction because they're younger or less experienced. The deal under contract is all the credibility that you need.
Yes.
Right. The deal, if it's a deal, it's going to produce a profit. So whether that's going to be a profit via a flip or a profit via monthly cash flow, it has to produce that. And if you have control of that under contract, regardless of when you started this business, regardless of what your experience is, regardless of how you feel about your age. I got clients that they don't want to go out because they're too young. I've got clients that say, oh, I'm an old guy now. I don't know if they're even I can play with these young whippersnappers anymore, right? And everybody's in their own mind about thinking they're in some sort of disadvantaged position. But your advantage is the property under contract that actually is going to produce a profit. So when you have that and you approach your private money people, you're not asking for a loan. You're not asking to borrow. You're not like going to a bank and filling out an application and hoping they approve you. No, it's like, I got something. I did the hard part. I can get the money from anywhere. If you want a return on your investment that's going to beat where it's sitting at the moment, then this is what you need to be involved in, because this is going to produce a higher return than your savings account, maybe even the higher return than what your stocks are at right now. And it's going to be secured by a real asset, by real estate, of which I have under contract with a 20% equity position. There's no safer place to be for you. And I'm going to do all the work. I just need the money to do it. So do you want to be a part of this, or should I go share it with your neighbor? So those might not be the exact words, but that is the mindset. You're doing them a favor. You're presenting an opportunity to your private money people. If you have this idea that you're going and asking for a favor and you're asking for a loan, then that's exactly how you're going to get treated.
Yeah.
Right. So if you find the deal and get under contract, it's so much easier to find the money. It might seem like a big giant mystery for you before you have that property under contract, but once you got it and you go through that process just one time, you're going to be like, now I get it. Right. It's going to be a big epiphany for you.
Okay. And right now in 2021, obviously the numbers were different throughout many years you've been doing this. Is there an interest rate that usually do with the private money guys?
All right. So the interest rate is going to be primarily dependent on the deal.
Okay.
So I calculate the ROI on the deal first. And then that lets me know how much I can pay the private money person. So on a cash flowing property, for example, if I got a 15% cash on cash return, I know I have that to play with. So I know, if their money's sitting in a savings account, they're not even getting 1%, right? If they're in the stock market, they're going to get their money from the stock market. They might be getting 8 to 10%. I think that's what was the average last year for mutual funds. So I know that's probably where I'm going to be. So it'd be 6, 7, 8% is probably where it would land for that type of deal, because that's going to leave 8, 9% left over from me.
Okay. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty good. I mean, that's usually what we're getting around here. One more thing I think a lot of people might get confused with really quickly. Do you know the difference between private money versus hard money? Because a lot of YouTubers out there keep using these terms like interchangeably.
Yeah, they do use them interchangeably. You're right. Yeah, it's very distinct.
Yeah.
So if you go to Google and search hard money or private money, anything that comes up is going to be hard money, right? A hard money lender is typically someone that was once a private money lender and figured out, wow, I can make some money off of this. And they went and made a business out of it.
Yeah.
That's typically what a hard money lender is. Private money, that's relationship money. You need to think of it in that way, as a relationship. So if the challenge and why it's so difficult to find is people don't try to build those relationships until they actually need the relationships.
Yeah. That's
where the challenge is going to come. And so if you have those relationships in advance before you actually need the money, there's a great book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. I think is John Maxwell that wrote that book. But it's so true. So you have to be a little bit proactive with your private money sources, and you need to not look at them as private money sources. You need to look at them as relationships and treat them in the same way that you treat the relationships that you have at the moment. And one thing that you can do, and I just did this just walking through my hallway of the office. I'm at home right now, but this guy and hey, how's it going? How's the real estate going? I said, it's going really good. I'm working on some new deals, and I'm getting some really great seller finance stuff, but I'm running short on the money that I'm needing for the down payments. I don't have anything right now, but would you be open to like an 8% return on your money if I came up with something? Well, yeah, sure. Yeah. Bring it to me. Let me know. Perfect. Okay. I don't have anything right now, but I go ahead and I'll just call you when something comes up. Yeah, please do. So that's the whole conversation. So I just planted the seed. I know he's going to open for 8%. I did it really nonchalantly, and wasn't all like committed to the outcome because I didn't have a deal at the time anyway. Or maybe I did, right? So if I did have the deal, I still wouldn't tell him I had the deal right now because a lot of people think like you're about to pounce on him. But I just do it nonchalantly, casually. Oh, by the way, I saw you got a new car, and is that a 5-speed or whatever, and then just change the subject. But just do that nice and nonchalantly and casually before you actually need the money. And now I just I got my little mental Rolodex that, hey, the guy across the hallway from my office, he said he's open to an 8% return and he wants me to call him. So when that deal comes up, it's like, hey, you remember that deal is 8%? This one's actually a little better. It's 9%. Does it still make sense for us to get together? Yeah, come on over, show it to me. And boom, I just go over and I'll show them the deal. And that's how I've done it all the time for, I don't know, probably 12, 13 years now.
Boom. I mean, I've been telling the same exact thing, but with cash buyers for everyone. Mm-hmm. Everyone that gets the real estate deal, they don't care until the cash buyer, so they actually have to find one. Same thing with the private money. Absolute gem. That is incredible. But so my next thing here is, so are you just renting these things out and just making basically an arbitrage on the difference?
Yep.
Perfect. Easy as that. And quick tip for people though, starting out. So how are you finding your tenants?
Oh, property management. I don't manage any of my properties.
Okay. So they'll go find the tenant for you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. And,
another great, go ahead.
And when it comes to property management, I think we need to clear this up. What are your absolute rules and musts when it comes to finding a property management company and actually managing the property management company?
Right. So I've done it long enough, and I've paid high costs. So the experience I'm about to share with you right now is in the high 6 figures it cost me to get it. Okay. But property, like when it comes to cash flowing property, when it comes to escaping the rat race, everyone thinks it's a real estate issue, right? It's a real estate thing. It's a property management thing. The property manager is as important, if not more important, than the real estate itself. So as much due diligence as we'll do on a property before we take ownership of it, you should do the same type of due diligence on your property manager. So the kind of the guidelines or the rules that we have when we're looking for a new property manager, first we'll look for a referral. We'll go out and seek fellow real estate investors that are holding rentals that have property management, and we'll try to get introduced that way. Going through like I was going to say the white pages, but then that would really show how old I am. But going through Google Property Manager and just kind of start making phone calls, that's going to be a total crapshoot. You might win, you might not. You probably won't. So first we start with a referral. Then we go ahead and we ask the questions, and you could just say questions to ask a property manager. Look that up on Google. You get a list of 10 of them, and they're all going to be on their best behavior though. So it doesn't really matter what you ask. They're all going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. But what do we like to do? One of the things we'll do is we will leave 2 of those questions off intentionally, then call them after hours and leave those 2 questions on the answering machine to see if they'll actually call us back with the answers in the morning. So that's one little guideline that we're kind of a real world application. And the second thing is we'll give them just one property to start with. So we've made that mistake. This sounds crazy and it maybe sound like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. We've actually put property managers out of business because we gave them too much to handle.
Yeah.
So start with one and then micromanage the hell out of them with that one until it's up and running and things are satisfactory to you. And I don't care if they get upset. I don't care if they get annoyed anymore. I've lost too much money with bad property management. I really don't care about your feelings. This is a business deal. This is a business relationship. Let's make sure that this is all done. And if you want to have a beer and have fun afterwards and we can hang out and shoot the shit later, then we can go ahead and do that. But right now, this is my property and it needs to run and needs to perform. Right. And so then once I got one and they've proven that, the other part is we always have at least a second property manager in the area. So we always divide up our portfolio and our markets. So I'm in 5 markets right now. So we have at least 2 property managers, 2 contractors, and 2 realtors in each market. And we make sure that they all know about each other. And so we're not pitting them against each other. We're not being malicious about it. We're not, we're not creating this competition, but inadvertently there is competition. They know they're not the only game in town. And so that once we started doing that, those kind of incorporating all of those things, we've really seen performance increase and those expenses decrease.
Wow. Guys, write that down because you're going to mess that up. I mean, so basically you've kind of downsized on the units you're doing from, back then to now. Is there a reason why you're doing that?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. One was it's really easy to get in the game with like the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 properties. Yeah. Right. And those, and if you're on the east end of the coast, you're like, oh my God, where do I find those? Because that's where I was initially, 12 years ago. Where do they have $50,000 houses? Well, all through the Midwest and the South, they're all over the place. And those $50,000 houses, on paper, they rent for $700-800. So that's like amazing cash flow numbers. So we got in deeply that way. And we bought a bunch in St. Louis, a bunch in Memphis, a bunch in Cleveland. We were in Indianapolis. We were in Kansas City. So we had properties, a ton of properties all over the place of these little $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 properties. Well, they don't attract the best quality tenants. On paper, they look good. On paper, they look like good investments. But at the end of the day, the real world numbers in your books, they don't perform nearly as good as they look. Yeah. So, for example, just a vanilla property in Memphis, that's $50,000 after it's all rehabbed and everything, you got $50,000 into it. It'll rent for $750 a month. Those are all over the place. But, and so that will calculate, I think, to, 13, 14% cash on cash return, something like that. But at the end of the day, that might have performed to a 1 or 2% actual cash on cash return after the turnover and the expenses and the vacancy and the issues that come with that type of property. We've discovered that it's much better to go up in that $100,000 price range for an 8 or 9% cash on cash return, because we can trust that one's actually probably really going to perform to the 8 or 9%. So even though it looks like half the deal on paper, in real life, it's twice the deal. So I had all of these properties we had up to 350 of these units. So some were duplexes and fourplexes. We had a couple multifamilies. But it just got to a point like I did this 80-20 analysis on my whole portfolio and just kept the 20% of the best ones and started liquidating that other 80%. And then is when I was left with a certain amount that I couldn't liquidate, or my CPA came to me. He says, Matt, since you have so many properties, you have a lot of losses to carry forward. So we had a lot of tax credits that we were unable to claim.
Ooh.
And so another way to generate passive income is when you sell a property via seller financing. So now you're the seller carrying back the note and you're selling it that way. But the problem with that is, or the two cons to that is, it's taxed at a much higher rate.
Yeah.
And second, every time someone makes you a payment, your asset actually gets smaller, right? So you're not building your wealth when you do that. But what you can do is you can find a good balance between the properties that you're holding and the notes on properties that you're holding, to where you can maximize your cash flow, minimize your tax liability, and minimize your property management headaches. Because obviously if you're holding a note, you're not the property manager, right? So you don't have to deal with issues and repairs and stuff like that. So each year we do our CPA does an assessment on, okay, so do you need more notes or do you need more properties? And we just kind of keep this juggling act right now. So right now we have about 50 houses and we have about 50 notes.
Okay. And so where are you putting your money now? So obviously you make some YouTube money, you got some other money coming in from lots of places. Where are you investing your money right now?
So I'm still buying houses. It's still the cornerstone of my whole portfolio. Just in this last year, with all of the, I don't know, just the weird things that show up in your news stream and a lot of the uncertainty about the future. Is the dollar going to collapse? Are we going to go through the great reset? Are we going to get taxed to a point where we have to start over? We hear about this redistribution of wealth and so this last year I really started to diversify a lot more. So fortunately I was smart enough to get into crypto about 3 years ago. So I have a little bit of crypto. I just started buying some mutual funds, just some Vanguard regular funds like that. I got a little bit of gold, got a little bit of silver, and I got some bullets, got some booze. And so I'm ready for the apocalypse, and I'm ready if it doesn't happen also. So I stopped buying my doodads. I'm not as big. I'm not consuming nearly as many Air Jordans as I used to. And the bottles of wine in the cabinet have shrunk quite a bit. I haven't replenished those. And so I'm really it's all about where can I put my money to make me more money. And those are some of the things I'm in right now.
Definitely. I mean, the reason I ask is there's not a lot of people I can talk to that have been through a real estate crisis before. And obviously you've been through it, so you understand. My next question is, since you're into creative finance, what could someone do, let's say, probably when the next real estate crash, reset, correction happens? How can someone capitalize on that with creative financing in real estate?
Yeah, so creative financing is going to be a much bigger tool to use when that happens. When we're in a strong seller's market like we're in right now, and I hear a lot of people shifting, let's say there's many wholesaling gurus out there, right? There's a ton of them. And they're all saying, hey, creative financing, that's the thing to do right now. That's the thing to do right now. And creative financing is actually really tough when we're in this strong of a seller's market. It's like, I'm like, what are you even talking about? You have no idea. Like, you're steering all your people totally wrong. It's really tough to do that in this market. But when it shifts, it's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, when it shifts and the power, even if it just went to a normal market, because a normal market is kind of considered what they call a broker's market, is when there's about 6 months of inventory. And right now we're like 1.5 months, and that's really, really low, right? And so it's tough to get creative right now. It's tough to get deals right now. But it's all going to shift. It's going to swing back. The pendulum will swing back, and it'll all be in our control. And once it does, you want to start brushing up and sharpening your creative financing skills now, though. You don't want to do it when it's too late. You don't want to do it while it's happening. But you just want to control as much as you possibly can during those low times, because it's not going to be low forever. And as that famous quote says, a rising tide lifts all boats. You want to be in control of a lot of boats and get as control as much as you can. And if you got the cash on the side, you can buy them outright. You could probably swing even deeper equity positions for yourself, but it's not necessary. You can buy as much real estate with your mind as you can your money.
100%. So I 100% agree with that. So really quickly, guys, you got a question for Matt, ask it below and we'll get it done. But my next question for you is, obviously, I've been preaching this forever. The next market crash or something that's going to happen, creative finance can be a great tool. Obviously, we have this video right now trying to help brush people up. So ask your creative finance questions for Matt. This guy absolutely knows his stuff. But I know you're not Nostradamus over here. But what are your predictions when it comes to real estate? Biden administration, when it comes to real estate? I've seen some stuff about 1031, stuff like that. What's kind of your Nostradamus prediction for the future?
Yeah. So are you talking about the market or how the new administration is going to impact the market?
I guess both.
Both. Okay. So as far as it goes right now, people are saying we're going to have a crash, and we eventually will. But the inventory is so low and the demand is so strong that I just don't see it happening anytime soon. Even if, let's imagine that all of these properties that are in this mortgage forbearance program, right? And then we have these foreclosure moratoriums, and it's a lot of them. And most of those people are going to come current. Most of those people are going to modify once the economy starts to open up. The fact that Texas opened up yesterday at 100% capacity, like no restrictions at all for the pandemic. Hopefully that's a good sign. Hopefully that's like the first domino to fall to start opening up the economy. But you can see, like I've gone through all the stats. I've been talking about this for like 3 or 4 months. But there's a definite correlation between those deficient mortgages, those delinquent mortgages, the payments being made, and the lockdown restrictions. So when the restrictions get tight, people stop paying the mortgage. Yep. When restrictions loosen up, people start paying the mortgage. So my whole point is, I think a lot of those people, as the economy starts to open up, a lot of those people are going to become current. Now, there'll still be some people left behind that won't be able to catch up. But even if all of those properties went into the foreclosure market, I don't think it would be enough to even shift this from out of a seller's market. There's so much demand there to prop it up. There's so much money on the side waiting. So I don't think that's going to cause any sort of crash. If you look at 2007, 2008, what caused the crash then, those situations, those circumstances don't even remotely exist right now. Yeah. So it's not going to crash for the same thing, that's for sure. So if you're saying it's going to be just like 2007, 2008, I'm like, based on what? Because what happened in 2007, 2008, that's not even possible right now. So there's that. So I think the two things you want to look at, one is keep your eye on employment. I think that's the big deal, right? If we look at what the official unemployment rates are, we're like 6.7%, 6.4%, something like that, which historically speaking isn't that bad. Yeah. We've had growing economies and growing housing markets with unemployment levels at that level. But Jerome Powell, I was going to say General Colin Powell, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, he just said officially about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, says, although we're at 6.4%, there's about 5 million people that have just kind of left the job force, the workforce completely. So he thinks the realistic unemployment rate is probably closer to 10%.
Yeah.
So now we're getting into a point where, okay, now that's a little bit of a concern. So we want to wonder how, and then as you had mentioned with the new Biden administration, I mean, when you have this shift from going from coal energy to clean energy in the interest of climate change and doing it, cutting off the coal jobs before the green jobs are even ready, like there's going to be a gap there of people who aren't going to have the place to go as well. Now we had 11,000 people on the pipeline up there, the XL pipeline, but that trickles out into their communities. That impacts the restaurants. It impacts the grocery stores. It impacts the cards, the auto shops and the dentists. And so that has a ripple effect. And that is the more of those types of cuts happen, the way the unemployment is going, that's the big number to watch, I think, as far as the impact in the crash. And then the whole tax thing. Yeah, that's an issue. I've got a couple properties right now that I'm trying to take advantage of the 1031 exchanges right now while it still exists. Yeah. That's for sure.
I was thinking about what you were kind of doing. I was like, oh my gosh, that 1031 is probably going to get a little crazy. So let's see here. So JK Commerce asks, so what are some of your go-to sources for finding creative finance leads?
Good question. So I don't look for creative financing deals. I just look for deals.
Yeah.
I look for, knowing that the seller's is always thinking in price. They're not thinking terms. They're not thinking creatively. Yeah. So I like to always just speak to that. Let's go for the low equity position first. And if we can't reach an agreement there, then we'll go ahead and we'll expand into the creative financing thing. So that's my primary mindset. The second part of that is, if you've done any marketing at all, and JK, thanks for the question. But I don't know what your experience is. If you've done any marketing at all, you really have no control as to what comes in.
Nope.
You can be laser targeted with your direct mail on the perfect subject to properties, and you're going to get properties that don't have any, or that are owned free and clear. You're going to get property, like every multifamily I ever bought, I bought from someone that I was marketing to for their single family.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So you just don't know what you're going to get. So just market generally how you probably already marketing. Look for deals, look for motivation. Every deal lies within the seller's motivation to sell. So you just want to be looking for the motivation mostly that more than anything else.
Definitely. And on that point, let's say we find a good wholesale deal or, a very, very high equity deal. Matt, if I threw you in the fire, you're in front of the seller right now. What would you tell that seller to get a creative deal done? What's your pitch?
So if it's a high equity deal?
Yeah.
Right. So I would still negotiate the price. I never lead with the terms. I never lead with the creativity. I mean, there's people out there that might do it, might be very good at it. I find it's much easier to go this way. I try to go for the equity position. And if I really didn't want to give them the cash for the equity spot, then it would be like, you know what? This $50,000, it's a good deal to me. I'm happy to do it. But, based on what you've shared with me, we've got this relationship. I could probably get you a little bit more if you were willing to take some of it now and the rest later. How much do you need right now? So that would be how I'd move into the creative thing if I really wanted to buy it creatively.
Guys, write that down. That's killer. And so you usually go there and then you basically will explain it. Do you usually on the appointment, do you have the paperwork with you, or do you wait and then get something signed, or do you get signed it like right there?
Yeah. If you're not driving around with paperwork in your car, you're not even prepared to do business. So you got to have your paperwork with you. Definitely.
I see other wholesaling guru guys say, give them a day or two, because with creative finance, if you change their mind the next day, get screwed. I'm just trying to think of all the crazy.
Not in today's market, especially because the next person's right 10 steps behind you. That's going to close that deal.
Definitely. And so last question here from Eric says, how can you position yourself with the real estate agents in creative finance?
Got it. So right now it's a little bit tough because the retail side of the market is so much in the seller's side. And the agents that are making all the money are the agents with the listings. So the one strategy that we've had some success with this year is looking for free and clear properties that have been on the market longer than 60 days. Okay, so then what we do is our agent will call the listing agent of that property and say something to the effect of, if you are a real estate agent, it really sucks to have a property for a long time. Oh, yeah. Okay, you're spending money on marketing. The seller's like, why haven't you sold it yet? They're blowing up your phone. They're bugging the hell out of you. And so it sucks to be an agent with the property. And so if you already know that pain, my agent calls their agents, hey, I know you got this listing over there. It kind of sucks. I mean, the market's so hot right now and you're sitting over there sitting on this. What's the deal? Why hasn't it sold? Well, they just haven't got their price yet or whatever it is, right? Okay, well, you know what? I've got a buyer, and this is the agent to agent talking, by the way, and you're gonna have to coach up your agent to do this for you, because agent to agent are gonna talk very differently than an agent to the consumer are gonna talk. Yeah. So you gotta have the agent to agent conversation. And so I know you had this, so I actually have a full price for you. I could probably get you that price, but it's probably not what you're looking for, but it is a real offer and it will close. I'm going to go ahead and send it over. I'm just going to ask you to present it to the seller and then get back with me with their comments. Okay. So preface it with that little pitch right there and kind of I know what it's like in this market to have a listing this long. It kind of sucks. I bet you're going through hell with the agent or with the seller, right? And then you present it that way, and then just do that as many as you can. So this is our formula. So my agent, I don't even talk to my agent anymore as far as presenting the offers. They know my formula. So what my formula is, we look for the free and clear properties that have been on the MLS longer than 60 days. Offer 10% down, full price, first of all, full price, 10% down, then 100 equal monthly payments of whatever half that market rent is, with a balloon payment on the 101st payment. So that's the formula.
Wow.
And so that's that. They have the authorization to use my signature and everything, and they're just firing those out for me.
Wow. That's killer right there. I mean, obviously right now, being a real estate agent for listings is the easiest thing in the world right now. But I think if there's some market uncertainty, that thing could do very well. But great question, Eric. So my last couple of questions for you, because I know we got some time constraints here, is first of all, this is the Bagswitches podcast. You might not know this, but I started as a bag boy. I quit when I was 17 to get in real estate. Very similar to your story, but a little different. So that's why it's called the Bagswitches Podcast. And I end this basically on the same question every single time. And you've been in the same situation as me. This is pretty cool. So I started $300, 17. I wanted to get in real estate. You started with no money also. So my question for you is, Matt, if you were back in Los Angeles at 18 years old, you're a bag boy, what would you do to become the next Matt Theriault?
So that's a good question, because I was that person, but I was just 34 years old when it happened. But what I recognized was a little website. I doubt if anyone has ever heard of this website called Craigslist. Have you heard of this website?
Oh, yeah.
So they got this website called Craigslist, and they got this big giant section of properties for sale and a big giant section of people that want properties. And so I kind of went through there playing matchmaker. So I would go through it and talk to the sellers, and I have something called a 9-point seller interview, one for buyers, one for sellers. And I just kind of go through and I just say, you know what, as you can imagine, I talk to a lot of people on a daily basis. And if I were to find that right property, or if I were to find that right buyer for you, what would be the best way for me to make that introduction? Right. And so they're like, wow, no one has ever asked to do me a favor before. Right. So that always gets received really, really well. And then it'd be great. So if I made that introduction, would there be room to carve out a small little referral fee for myself? And everyone says, well, of course, you bring me a buyer. If you bring me a property, of course. Right. So I just kind of lay that foundation, and I just started playing matchmaker. So I'd make 10 of those calls to the buyers, 10 of those calls to the sellers every day, and just kind of see where I could match and fit in. So that's how I started, with zero money, right? It doesn't take any money at all to do that. It takes work. It takes consistency. And you got to be persistent, but that will start to snowball. I mean, if you did that Monday through Friday, after 1 week, you've talked to 50 sellers and 50 buyers. You're putting deals together. Okay. You gotta stay a little bit organized and play matchmaker. The other part of it that I was doing, and I'm getting excited now that, hopefully the economy is opening up and maybe these RIA clubs will start to hold their events again live. But I'd find a property that I'd like on Craigslist that's for sale, and I'd call that seller up and say, hey, I'm going to a RIA club tonight, and they have this haves and wants section. And if you don't know, they'll have a moment in front of the room of every meeting where you can come up and say, hey, this is what I got, or this is what I want. And people in the room get to kind of address the whole crowd. And so I took advantage of that, and I would go and I would always have a property. And I would get it from Craigslist. I say, hey, I'm going to a meeting tonight, and I'd like to represent your property. Maybe I can find you a buyer. Would that be okay? Well, of course. Great. So if I find one, would there be room to carve out a small referral fee for myself? Of course. Great. So I'm just going to make a little flyer of your property. I'm just going to put my contact information. That's cool. Perfect. All right. And so I just take that flyer, and then I had this formula when that time came up, because I hated talking to people. I hated networking. And I just I don't want to talk to a room of 100 people and give 100 sales pitches. Give me 60 seconds so I can pitch the whole room. So I had this thing called a formula, is an audio business card, followed by with them, what's in it for me, and then a call to action. So my audio business card was that I'd introduce myself and who I am, what I do. Said, hi, my name is Matt. I help busy professionals build passive income through real estate in their spare time so they can retire early. So there's my audio business card. Then what's in it for me? This is where a lot of people mess it up. You want to play everyone's favorite radio station, their favorite frequency, WIIFM. What's in it for me? You're talking to a room of investors. So you have to present what investors want. They want equity. They want ROI. They want a deal. They want cash on cash return. They want convenience. They want a steal, right? They want all of those things. So you have to put that in your presentation. So it'd be, and I got this property. It's on just off the corner of Main Street and East, and it's a single family, 3-bed, 2-bath. It's priced 20% below market value. It has a double-digit cash on cash return. There's already a tenant in place. In fact, I've been able to arrange seller financing for you. So if you'd like some more information, so now that was what's in it for me. So I talked about equity and discount and cash on cash return. I spoke the investor's language, and then I gave them a call to action. So if you'd like some more information on this property and others just like it, go ahead and meet me in the back of the room after the meeting, and I'd be happy to give you a flyer. And that's it. And so in 45 seconds, I am done. And out of the 100 people that are in the room, 5 or 6 people that are actually interested in it would come back and talk to me, and I'd always sell a house. And so I was always able to put a deal together that way. So those were the 2 ways I got started. So I could be dropped in anywhere USA and do that. And that's how I would start and do it all over again.
Wow. Boom. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and just helping us out here. Really quickly, obviously you do a lot of stuff. You do a lot of webinars, you do a lot of education. Where can people find you? I know you're in Instagram jail right now, but what are some of your socials for people to get connected with you?
Yeah. So if you're listening on the podcast, so go to the Epic Real Estate Investing Show. So that's got the longest running active real estate investing podcast on iTunes right now. I think Jason Hartman is the only one that's there ahead of me, but he's more of an economist than a real estate guy, but we're good buddies. So there's that on the podcast. And if you're watching me on YouTube, just go to the Epic Real Estate YouTube channel and hit me up in the comments. I read them probably 4 or 5 times a week, and I respond as much as I possibly can. So those would be the 2 places. Boom.
Matt, thank you so much. You're a go-giver. Really quickly, do you have any parting thoughts for the guests before we head off?
Let's see. Parting gifts, parting ideas. God, there's so many. The name of the game is just consistency. And that sounds a little bit like a cliche, but just get up and do the money-making activities on a daily basis and make sure that you're submitting offers. Yeah. Always be submitting offers. The number of deals you do are going to be in direct proportion to the number of offers you present. So if you got a great marketing system and you're generating leads and you're talking to those leads, even if you're going on appointments, right? And if you're doing all those right things, those are all the right things to do. But if you go through that entire process and you don't actually present an offer in writing to a seller, you're wasting your time. You're leaving money on the table. So always present an offer.
100%. Matt, thank you guys so much. EpicREI.tv. Check it out. A lot of great stuff. Thank you so much, Matt.